You are listening to the On Purpose Podcast, your guide to living a more purposeful life. What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose Podcast, where we hope to move, inspire, get you thinking a little bit, challenge maybe some of the things you're telling yourselves. And this week, I'm super excited to have a special guest with me, Chris Raup, the founder of the Warrior Trail Foundation. He's a retired United States Army major who's channeled his passion for trail running into a powerful mission to support veterans and their families by providing opportunities for coaching to experience the physical, mental, and spiritual benefits of trail running, hiking, and being outdoors in nature. But before we bring Chris on the show, I want to ask you to help us grow the channel, help us reach more people and share more powerful stories like Chris's by liking, subscribing, sharing, wherever you're listening, wherever you're consuming, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, any of our social media, or the podcast apps. Help us brighten the days of more people around the world. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this week's powerful conversation with Chris Raup. This episode is brought to you by Erie Coffee Roasters. Our ethically sourced coffee is not just a drink, it's a commitment to quality and sustainability. Erie Coffee Roasters' online subscription service makes it easy to enjoy fresh coffee delivered right to your door. Use code ONPURPOSE at eriecoffeeroasters.com for 10% off your first order, or join us at our Erie Coffee Roasters Cafe in Frederick, Colorado, where every cup tells a story. Discover your new favorite brew today. Chris, my friend, welcome to the On Purpose Podcast. How are you doing today?
Living large, man, living the dream. Thank you so much for having me.
Dude, thank you for taking time out of your busy world to share your story with us and to trust us to share it. And you are living the dream. And that's one of the things I love. Like, just watching you, I'm like, man, this is a guy who's not just settling for average in life in any facet. You've had fascinating careers, you're pushing yourself physically, and I couldn't wait to get you on. I was just excited it worked out to be able to share this story.
Cool. Well, I appreciate your patience. I think you reached out to me 2 months ago, and I was like, "Yeah, we got to do it." And then I was like, "Oh, sheesh, I got to get back to this guy."
Yeah, no, it's good, and that's how it works, man. Like, life is
Yeah.
life. But I wanted to start, Chris, with a little warm up with you, right? Like, we're not just gonna. You're an ultra athlete now. You sent me the video. Is that 240 miles I watched?
Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah, that was my first 200 plus finish.
And,
So,
and honestly, that's what I loved about you. Even in sending me that, is like that was the one you finished, but you also prefaced you had failed a couple other times trying before.
barriers learning, man.
Yeah, it is, and I that's one of the things I want to get more in the world is like accepting failure and being like, hey, failure is a good thing, and it's usually the
Yeah.
best stories come from shit we failed at.
Yeah, for sure. For
Uh,
sure.
but 240 miles is a long ways.
Yeah, the constant thing I hear from people is I don't even like driving that far. Yeah, it's a long ways for sure. And that particular race is the Moab 240 and starts and finishes in Moab, Utah. And it's an amazing race from the standpoint that the lion's share of that race, you feel like you're out on the moon.
Yeah,
Um, there is just nothing, just desolation and desert environment. And for a guy who was born and raised in Pennsylvania, that's quite the transition to make to go from our what I'm very used to, which is hardwoods forest, migrating into the desert environment. And I honestly didn't think I was going to enjoy it. But what I found is the desert has a way of growing on you.
mm,
It's an interesting thing. And I think what I really found about Moab and in the desert, it's pretty amazing to be able to look out across and see 50, 60 miles, right?
yeah,
I mean, you can't do that anywhere in Pennsylvania.
right.
So, so that's pretty awesome. And then it's got two mountain ranges. And for me, it was just get to the first mountain range, which is the Abohos, Shea Mountain down in the south, and then make the turn for, at which point you're 120 miles into the race and you're halfway done. And you can look back up and see Moab in the distance, like see, Arches National Park in the distance in that range and know, wow, I got to go all the way back up there. But first I got to detour over here and do the LaSalle Mountain Range and climb about, another 20,000 feet in this race to get back to where I dropped back down off of Porcupine Rim and back into Moab. It's an epic adventure. I had an amazing team, and it was fun.
All right.
It hurt like a mother, but it was fun.
But I was getting tired watching it. But here's the deal, Chris, man. I can't just have an ultra athlete like you. I know you're probably ready to get up and just go, but I gotta warm you up. We just don't go full
Yeah,
speed right off the bat. You ready for this, my friend?
sure. I am.
All right, sunrise or sunset?
Sunset, man.
Why is that?
Sunrises were forced on me into the army. I've I'm an afternoon runner, and I've vowed when I retired from the army that I was never getting up at 4 o'clock to run in the morning unless it was for a race. You know, Sunsets there, it's what I call the golden hour. It's no matter where I am, I always try to pause and take 5-10 minutes and watch that sun go down and be grateful for the opportunity to have lived another day on this planet
Mm,
and hopefully made a change or an impact somewhere in that day. And that, transition to darkness is just like, I don't know, man. It's called the golden hour for a reason. And for me, it's like the best time of the day. I try to time my training runs to finish up in sunset.
okay. Yeah, very nice. All right, favorite quote or a quote that stuck with you throughout your life that you go back to?
Wow, I listened to some of your other podcasts in preparation for this. I can't pinpoint one quote except for my own mantra, which is win the day.
Okay.
And, I think that is the thing. But I will say, if you wanted to talk about like a big quote, my favorite thing that I read to myself before a race or when I'm, feel like I'm really being challenged is Roosevelt's Man in the Arena.
Mm, love it.
And spectacular, and I've sent that on to people who I know are going through rough patches. And I think there's nothing better out there. You can apply that to every challenge you have in your life.
Yeah, you can, especially in a day and age like now where everybody has a voice and an opinion on everything and they can just share it freely.
Yeah, for sure.
It's super
Yeah.
important to remember the people that aren't doing what you're doing. What's the value in their opinions?
Yep. Yep, for sure.
All right,
Love that.
song stuck in your head or on repeat?
Huh. Wow. You know, um, well, I listened to a lot of Shinedown
Okay,
and
nice.
yeah, or One Republic,
Okay,
um, you know, so I wouldn't say just one song, but any song that's about living today and being grateful, for what you have today and, any song that gives me power or empowers me to push through hard times. That's why I like those two bands.
yeah,
Shinedown, man. It's
there you go.
pretty pretty good stuff there.
Favorite book, Chris?
That's easy. Born to Run.
Okay. When did you
I
first
have
read that?
Oh man, I want to say it was probably I was a latecomer to that book. Probably about 2013, something
Okay,
like that, 2014. No, I take it back. It was 2015. It was right around the same time that my father passed, and we can talk about that later. But
sure.
I was late to that book. And it's funny because I read that book and thought it was so amazing and so empowering, and never once for a second imagined that I would someday be able to run 100 miles. Like
Mm,
that was like this was a book about the elite of the elite, like the $6 million man kind of guy. This wasn't a book about regular old folks, you know.
yeah.
But I love the book, and I've read it once, but I think I've listened to it during my ultra long races, probably another 6 or 7 times, and every single time I listen to it, I get something else.
What's the most recent takeaway you had from it?
You know, I think that, and I don't even know if it's explicitly spelled out in there, but to endure is mindset.
Yeah.
Endurance comes from mindset. It doesn't come from, it's not just physical prowess or anything like that. I mean, mindset is everything. And I I just heard this the other day on a David Roach podcast. They were talking about this. It's sort of funny. He's like, you're running along and late in a race, and you don't think that you can put another foot you know, in front of the other foot. Like you're getting to that point, and they're definitely like not even thinking that you can speed up or even maybe run from the walk that you're in. He said, unless somebody offers you like $1 million to make the next mile faster than the previous one, and he said, suddenly you have all the energy in the world.
Yeah.
you know, you know, and he's like, that's how we know it's mindset, you know,
Mm.
and the only limiting factor for most people is their mind. It
Ah,
Most of us have the ability to just go do another mile. Um, and I've worked with wounded warriors that, um, you know, if you looked at them, you didn't think that they would, in their own physical body, not be able to go do something. But if their mind's capable of imagining it, they can do it. It's
yeah.
really amazing.
And that's so true for so many of us, right? If we actually visualize ourselves doing it, we see ourselves doing it, we tell ourselves we can do it, most of the time we
Hmm.
can.
Absolutely.
Well, if you were late to that book, I'm ancient to that book because I just read it last year for the first time, and I just finished it like a week ago for the second time. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, no, that was a fantastic book, well written, great storytelling, and like you said, so many points that the more you read it, you get something different out of it.
Yeah, it really highlights the community of trail running.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. All right, you get to have dinner with one person. Who do you want to have dinner with, and what would you ask them?
Wow. I thought about this yesterday for a while, and it's sort of an interesting thing. Last night, my wife and I watched a documentary on Lance Armstrong,
Mm.
and you know, love or hate, a lot of haters,
Hmm.
right? But at the end of the day, I think I would love to have dinner with that guy. Yeah, my theory on this is he was doing what everybody else was doing, and he was still kicking their ass, right?
Sure.
Everybody else was doping. Everybody else was doing all the same shit, and he was still kicking their ass. And you know why? He spent more time in the saddle than any of them.
Mm.
The truth is irresistible. Like you can't deny it.
Okay.
Okay. And if everybody was doing it and everybody was on the same playing field and everybody was working with the same doctor, he was spending more time in the saddle. And maybe because he was a cancer survivor, he was like, fuck it, I got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Right. And that mindset and the mindset that made him think that he was better than everybody else allowed him to win. I would love to have dinner with that dude and pick his brain about mindset and all those other things. I don't care about all the other stuff. And say what you want about his record and everything else, but that dude changed the face of fundraising for cancer research.
Really.
And yeah, absolutely. The Lance Armstrong Foundation and their partnership with Bristol Myers Squibb was and still is. I mean, it's not called the Lance Armstrong Foundation anymore,
Yeah.
but Live Strong goes on. And and they went from, their first fundraiser, they thought they'd get a couple hundred cyclists out for. They had 5,000 people show up for that, and every one of them raised $1,000 plus. And I rode from Rockville, Maryland into the lawn at the White House with the Lance Armstrong Foundation back during that time frame. Rode next to Lance, George Hincapie, Tyler Hamilton. Um, it's an amazing experience. I raised $2,500 for him, and that was my introduction to raising money for cancer research. So,
And it's
you know,
definitely something you've taken on. I mean, you've been doing fundraising as one of your primary outreaches since.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, after my father passed in 2015, I went and raised a lot of money for the Leukemia Society. Running the Marine Corps Marathon was my first endeavor into back into running. We can talk about that, but I've raised over $100,000 over the years for the Team in Training and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So
Yeah, no, you're right. That's stuff that gets forgotten in the whole Lance Armstrong story is the actual good stuff he did do. Um,
yeah,
and maybe he'll have a chance to rewrite his story a little bit in the future. Maybe people will give some grace and kind of like you said, put it in perspective that it was a time. It's kind of similar
yeah,
to the baseball steroid era, right? Where baseball
yeah,
knew everybody was doing it, they marketed it, they promoted it, and now we want to look
yeah,
back and say you guys can't be rewarded for any of your accomplishments.
yeah. As simple as putting pine tar on bats, right?
Right.
I mean, in the documentary, it was really interesting. I mean, he made the comment that for the whole advancement of cycling from the first Tour de France until the time that they changed the rules on this, right? Every single year was about what can I do to get better,
Mm.
faster, stronger, from a technology standpoint on the bikes to the shoes that I wear to the shorts that I wear to the food that I eat. It was every single year. And then all of a sudden somebody draws a line in the sand, at which point everybody was already doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And was non-detectable for the next 5 years until they figured out a test for it. And then all of a sudden, they're like, oh, you can't do this. But everybody's like, but we've been doing
Right.
it. you know?
Yeah. No, that's an interesting dilemma for sure. The Tactical Harmony podcast is hosted by Rebecca Fitzsimmons, a former NCIS special agent turned holistic leadership coach and mindset strategist. Drawing on nearly 20 years of experience empowering high-achieving professionals to break barriers and lead with purpose, Rebecca shares tried and true strategies and actionable insights to help you excel in today's fast-paced world. If you're ready to lead with impact and create harmony in the chaos, the Tactical Harmony podcast is for you. Available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or check it out at tacticalharmony.com or in the show notes below. All right, Chris, you feeling warmed up, my friend?
I am. I'm ready to roll.
Hey,
What do you want to know?
I would like to start with your military service because I think that ties into a lot of where the conversation is
Sure.
going to go. Talk us through your military service and then, like you mentioned earlier, rediscovering running as you were
Yeah.
exiting.
Yeah. So I got into the Army in 2000, or yeah, 2000. Geez, I wish. 1998. I was at Lock Haven University, and went into ROTC. And next thing I knew, I was going through a physical and signing a contract to join the Army Reserves. I actually went into the Marine Corps Reserves first, um, to try to enhance my chances at a scholarship, and that didn't pan out. So I switched over to the Army, because I would have had to drive like an hour to go to ROTC from Marine Corps.
Yeah.
But yeah, and went through Army ROTC at the same time of having done basic training in AIT to get some money for college. And the Army basically paid for my last 2 years of school. And I owed them 6 years, and I gave them 20.
Nice.
So, yeah, I was a National Guard officer most of my career, but I ended up finishing up with over 10 years of active duty time, because I really didn't like my civilian career, and I volunteered for every tour I could get.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, and I think I read in the bio it took you overseas, right? Was it Iraq or
yeah.
Afghanistan?
Yeah, I was in Bosnia in 1996 for almost a year. I was in Iraq in 2006. Did some time in Egypt on a Bright Star tour, and a lot of time in Germany on warfighter exercises and things like that. I saw quite a bit of the world traveling around with the Army. But came home from Iraq in 2006 with quite a bit of survivor's guilt and PTSD. It was a tough tour for me. I had ended up in Iraq to finish the tour of a friend of mine who had been killed by a suicide bomber over there.
Mm,
And so I, stepped into his shoes, which were larger than life.
mm,
Um, and it was a tough tour because I showed up a number of months. The rest of the unit had been there for almost 6 months when I got there, so they were already sort of combat hardened, and I stepped into that environment where I was not used to that environment. Very kinetic, full on, um, hard fighting, and I was in Ramadi
yeah.
as we led into the surge. So. You know, it was it was some of the most intense combat since Khe Sanh in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So
Chris, would you mind? Can we expand on something there for our community members, our listeners that aren't really familiar with survivor's guilt? Talk us through what that is like emotionally, right? Knowing like that somebody else didn't
yeah,
make it and we're still here.
you know, um, I think the weirdest thing about that is, I mean, you go into combat knowing the
Hmm.
risks, right? I mean, and you train to mitigate those risks. But all of my training leading into my deployment to Iraq was, I mean, we spent the first 10 years training against the Russian horde,
Right.
right? It was going to be force on force. It was not going to be this thing. And global war on terrorism completely turned all of our training upside down. We had to figure out how to fight against 10 guys with machine guns that were blending in with society,
Yeah.
right? That's that's and improvised explosive devices and booby trapping every single street that you walk down. And wow, I got to tell you that I don't I don't know. I mean, I never was in a combat zone where we were truly like force on force, like we were perhaps in the first Gulf War.
Right.
But or like in Vietnam. To me, I look at the guys that fought in Vietnam as like, brigade against battalion or battalion on battalion. That's crazy. It's that mindset is I can't even wrap my head around it after experiencing what we experienced in Iraq. But I think the thing about it is, like you're on a fire base, you're taking rocket. We were taking rocket and mortar attacks 3, 4 times a day, and that's they're not really aiming for a target. They're aiming for a 10 square mile stamp in the ground. You couldn't miss it if you tried. I mean, you didn't have to be trained to fire
Right.
a mortar to put a mortar into there. And really, the impact is you just don't know where it's going to land. And just because this one over there landed, 300 yards that way doesn't mean that the next one's not going to land on top of you because they don't use any of the fire control measures or any of those things that we use. I was an artillery officer, fire support officer, so I truly understand,
Right.
incoming and outgoing. But frankly, Iraq was my first experience with incoming indirect fire. Not a fan. Okay, so just
Yeah. Don't recommend that.
don't recommend incoming at all, right?
Yeah.
So, we took a lot of casualties, and our brigade of like almost 5,000 people took the highest casualty rate of any brigade since Vietnam. And it's just a tough thing when you come home or even while you're there, like you just can't figure out why that guy doesn't make it or that guy, loses his arms and whatever else or has a traumatic brain injury for the rest of his life and you don't.
Right.
And I think I'm actually working on my book I was telling you about. But one of the things that I've come to realize is where it hit me the most was on the flight back into the United States. And I'm sitting there on the plane with three other officers, and all the enlisted and NCO got on off the plane, and the four of us were sitting there in the plane, sort of looking at each other like, who's going to get off, right? And, and our families are out there waiting for us, and yes, we want to get off and see our families that we haven't seen in months. But on the other hand, leaving the plane was an abrupt ending to that mission,
Yeah.
right? And I sat there and I realized that I was supposed to feel this like massive sense of accomplishment, right? Like, hey, we're home from combat. This is a great homecoming. And all I could feel was, um, I don't even want to say guilt, but shame.
Really?
Like, I didn't feel like, what's my great accomplishment from this mission? Oh, I survived. Hmm. Doesn't really doesn't really resonate, you know? And I don't know why my mind went there rather than thinking about the things that we accomplished. I've got officer evaluation reports that said I served honorably and accomplished amazing things while I was over there. And none of those things mean shit to me. I would rather have my buddy back,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
How long?
So
How long did that stay with you, Chris?
still there, man.
Still battling it.
Yep. Every day. I think almost every day um, I think about, Mike's family and where his daughters are today and how his wife is doing and the other guys that I lost, fraternity brothers that I lost elsewhere in combat and, where they'd be today. And like when I go elk hunting, I think about that because these guys were all avid hunters, man. They would give anything to be out there elk hunting with me. And I can tell you they are. They're
Yeah.
with me on they're with me on every run. They're with me on every trip. I don't know. I mean, from a PTSD guilt standpoint, I've got friends that are mental health professionals. I did some counseling. Um, but recently I've come to terms with the fact that I don't want to ever get to a position where I don't think about them on a daily basis.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think, I mean, as a police officer, I think you probably know what I'm talking about.
Well, I would never say for sure because I didn't serve overseas in Afghanistan or Iraq. I was in the service and out before those wars kicked off.
Hmm.
So I'd never presume I know anything. But what I would highly thank you for is taking it and using it as a positive, right? To know that like it's
Hmm.
okay to think about them and it's okay to remember them
Yeah,
while we live our lives.
yeah, absolutely. We can be fully functional, live, and I truly believe that I'm living my life for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Like it's my duty. And that took me a while. There's a time period where you actually feel like it might just be easier to join them,
Yeah.
you know? And I mean, my dad walked for the turning point for me was 2 years afterwards. I was home. My dad had retired. He spent 26 years in the Air National Guard, went in during Vietnam, mostly not to get away from going to Vietnam, but he figured if he was going to go to Vietnam, he wanted to go with all his friends.
Right.
So they all joined the Air National Guard together, and then they ended up never going, you know? And, but he walked into my office one day in 2008 and said to me, I have a question for you, and you might not want to answer it. I said, what's that? He said, my buddies that came home from Vietnam said to me that it would be easier to come home in a box. Do you ever feel that way? And, for 2 years, I thought I had everybody fooled. I
Wow.
was just like, I was just going on, getting through, and I just broke down and I was like, yeah, absolutely. I said, almost every day I wish I was there with him, you know? And he said to me, he said, He said, I don't know what that feels like from your standpoint, but I know what it felt like for me. And he said, maybe you ought to talk to somebody, you
Wow.
know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that had to be hard for my dad
Yeah.
to come in and do that, you know? And what a brave moment for him.
Sure. And for you.
Sorry, it
And
breaks me up a little, man.
no, me as
But,
well. And a brave moment for
like,
you to admit it and to
yeah,
not continue to put up the wall and pretend for his sake that you were all right.
yeah. Yeah, and it was interesting when I started having conversations with my friends. They're like, you've been a complete asshole for 2 years. I was like, and at what point were you going to call me out on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I get it. It's hard, right? It's like you got a friend that's got a drinking problem. How many of us, confront that, right? Something like that.
I
So,
know that's such a weird dichotomy, right, Chris? Like we love you so much, but we don't love you enough to have that difficult conversation, right? Like we're teetering on that line.
yeah, and I think, in I think in their defense, and certainly I've been there myself, okay? I think if you don't feel like you're qualified to have the conversation,
Sure.
right? You don't you don't want to be the guy that pushes them to the next level,
Right.
right? So because there's a right way and a wrong way to have that conversation. And that's
Yeah.
why I say it was so brave of my dad because, it's he has no idea how I'm going to respond to that.
Right.
So,
No, but he also, I'm just assuming, like, I'm thinking of difficult conversations I've had to have is
uh-huh.
I know the regret I would feel if I didn't at least say something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
One of my best days.
Well, I'm thankful that you were honest with him and you opened up and look what it's led to. You know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
doing amazing things now. So that while we're talking about your dad, you mentioned the importance of his passing and how that kind of shifted some stuff for you. Can we
Yeah.
talk on that?
Yeah. Um, yeah, for sure. I mean, so my dad was my hero,
Yeah.
you know. Um, he was the $6 million man and Superman and everybody and G.I. Joe wrapped into one, you know?
Yeah.
That's my era, I grew up in that era where we watched that,
Yeah.
right? And it was like he just always impressed me because he got beat up a lot in his career and things like that. And he just resilient,
Mm.
a stubborn, resilient, grew up as in Center County, Pennsylvania, working on the farm, was a future farmer of America, thought he wanted to be a farm boy and realized there wasn't much future in that. And went off to become went into the Air National Guard and then went off to become a um, uh, aircraft mechanic. And, unfortunately, that's probably what killed him because he died of acute myeloid leukemia. And I know I spent a lot of time at the airport with him when I was younger. I would go in the summer and hang out in the hangar, and he would pay me to clean the aircraft and do all these things. And I remember watching him like clean, you know, washing parts in a parts washer without any, protective equipment.
Yeah.
Back then, like they didn't know all those things were, all that stuff that all those companies were making, all those parts cleaners and stuff were causing cancer,
Yeah.
right? So, but anyway, in 2015, he was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and 30 days later, he was gone. And I think it affected me so much. It literally like all the PTSD that I was navigating through and everything else, I just spiraled down, um, losing my hero. And um, I think mostly because I took on the responsibility for the family of managing his healthcare for those 30 days. And I poured myself into all the studies and research and you know, discussed with the doctors at Hershey Medical Center all the different ways we could try to treat him and things like that. And he was willing to go along with it because I was leading the fight.
Yeah.
Um, I think, when they told him his diagnosis, I think if he had been left to his own devices and the family wasn't sitting there, he would have been like, okay, just keep me comfortable,
Yeah.
right? But I was like, Dad, we got this.
Yeah.
You know, like there's all kinds of new treatments out there, and we had a young, aggressive doctor who was willing to do them, and if he was willing to try,
Yeah.
right? And man, I was like, hey, this is so inappropriate and so wrong in looking back on it, but somehow I felt I couldn't save those guys in Iraq and Afghanistan, my buddies, but maybe I can save my dad.
Hmm.
And I was wrong. And it was really naive of me to believe that I could outsmart, um, acute myeloid leukemia on a otherwise healthy 70-year-old,
Right.
right? And I mean, yeah, it's, but man, I was arrogant and I thought I could do it. And I took sole responsibility for it. And it took me a while to come to terms with the fact that I really had zero control in that. The
Hmm.
only thing I could really do is try to give my dad the mindset to be positive about it. But, you know,
Yeah.
it's so that really affected me. And afterwards, I couldn't sleep. I lost my dad on April 15th, and which was sort of timely because my dad hated paying taxes. So I thought that was like his his final sort of FU to the
Yeah,
IRS,
man. Get
right?
me out of here before the tax man comes. I love it. And
Yeah,
that
so
fits in with his stubborn personality, right? Like, I'm not
yeah,
gonna
for
pay
sure,
taxes for
right?
this year.
He always said he wanted his last check to bounce, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean seriously, like if you would have known my dad, he had this. I mean, like I'm an exact replica.
I love
Yeah,
it.
we had the same personality and sense of humor, and he would be like, "You to the IRS," right? So, but um, yeah, it was like 2 months later. I just couldn't sleep at night. I tried to go to bed. I couldn't. I was actually a little bit afraid to drink because I was afraid I was going to spiral.
Yeah.
I've never been like that with alcohol, but I was trying to like really regulate it because I was like, I can't bury myself in a bottle, right?
Mm.
Um, and I was just getting out to do things. I turned my back on my business, and geez, my partner in the business and my staff were trying to get me re-engaged with clients, and I was like, I do not want to have a conversation about, retirement saving with another person right now. Like,
Yeah.
like it's just not there. One night, I was like, I got to do something. And I was on the Leukemia and Lymphoma website, and I learned about this thing called Team in Training, where you basically sign up and promise to raise funds for them, and they give you a coach and get you ready for a marathon. And I picked the Marine Corps Marathon, which was 4 months out. And at that point, I was probably capable of running about 2 miles without coughing up a lung. I mean, I was a soccer player, but soccer is like run, walk,
Yeah.
run, walk, right? And I signed up, and in the morning, I told my wife I had signed up for a Marine Corps, and she's like, or for the Marine Corps Marathon. She's like, "What?" She's like, "You're gonna run a marathon?" It's like, yeah, it can't be that hard. Thousands of people do it every year,
Right.
right? But 4 months later, I towed the line and I got it done. It wasn't pretty, but I got it done. And I was hooked. I was like, those last 6 miles were that was the most severe pain I had ever experienced in my life. And I
Phys-
was like,
Physical or mental? Both?
both. Both, but this interesting thing that I think that goes back to an earlier conversation we had. Like when I was sitting on the plane, I expected there was going to be this total rapture when I crossed the finish line, you know, this like amazing experience, and everything was going to melt down and I was going to break down. And I crossed the finish line and I was like, that it?
Yeah.
And that was almost disappointing, right? And I was like, well, that was really hard. That was very difficult. That was severe pain, but that's nowhere near what I'm probably capable of,
Ooh, nice.
right? And I think that's where the disappointment came. And then the next day I went to Arlington and I was hobbling, could barely walk. Went to Arlington the next day and visited a couple of my fraternity brothers' graves. And next to my fraternity brother was Megan McClung, her gravesite. I will always remember that name because I actually met her. She was a Marine Corps officer. I met her in Iraq, and she was killed in Iraq. And somebody had run the marathon the day before and placed their medal on her tombstone
Oh, wow.
with their bib. And I hunted that person down, found their bib, found them on social media, and sent them a message and told them how amazing I thought that was. And we never spoke after that, but we had a nice little dialogue, and I said, "Hey, I don't know what your relation to Megan was," and turned out they were very good friends. And I said, I met her once, and she was impressive as hell.
Wow.
That's all I can say to you. You know, so that's like eerie, right? That
Yeah.
their grave sites would be side by side, but
Yeah, it's eerie, but then it's also very intentional, probably that the universe wanted passed across.
yeah, yeah, had to be something.
Yeah.
I don't believe a lot of things are coincidence, you know?
No.
I
100%.
think that's my spiritual side, right?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. So you realize there's something more, you're more capable than 26 miles. Is that what leads you into the ultra running then? This episode is brought to you by Brenda Rice, a dedicated local realtor in Northern Colorado. Having known Brenda for over 20 years, I can vouch for her hard work and dedication while watching her transition from a police career into real estate. Brenda has teamed up with Shelley Borman from Loan Depot to create a tailored first responder program, making home buying in Northern Colorado easier and more affordable than ever. Special incentives are available to our listeners. For more details, reach out to Brenda at Brenda Rice Co. Realtor on Instagram or click the link in our show notes.
Yeah, it was actually like about a year or two later, well, about a year later, that a friend of mine talked me into running. Oh, yeah, it was the next year. A good friend of mine, Linda, she's a military Army wife from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and she talked me into, hey, you should run this trail half marathon. And I said, it's just a half marathon. Like, how hard can that be? She
Yes.
said, yeah, but this isn't road running. This is trail running. And I was like, I grew up in the mountains. No big deal, right? She talked me into running this thing. I went out. I had no idea how to pace myself for a trail half marathon, turned myself inside out. And I think a mile from the finish, fully seized, like cramped in my arms, my calves, my quads. I was totally broke, man. I walked in like,
Oh, no.
and I was like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I gotta figure this out. And then she double dog dared me to run a 50K like 6 months later. Um, and Army officer gets double dog dared, you can't back away from that. So
No, you don't ever turn down a double dog there.
no.
No
And
way.
that was the beginning. That was the beginning. And I just started running a bunch of 50Ks after that. That first 50K, man, I finished with like 6 minutes to spare. I had to step over the finish line because they had already taken it down.
50K.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talk me so now you're into ultra running and you're out on the trails, and what is that doing for your mind? Like, what is that connection that you're building within yourself?
It's active meditation for me.
Mhm.
I can't sit and meditate because I can't sit still for about 5 minutes. So my wife will always say, if I sit still for 5 minutes, odds are I'm falling asleep. So, so for me, it's active meditation. I love that feeling you get after you've been out for me, it's now about 2 or 3 hours. After I'm out about 2 or 3 hours, I'm like in that zone. And man, suddenly I can do all kinds of mental work that I can't do any other time because there's too much noise
Yeah.
going on, you know? And I'm thinking like trying to be present is hard for me.
Yeah.
But 2 hours into a long trail run, I'm present. And the only thing I'm thinking about is what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that's fast. I 100% agree with you on that. And that's, like I said, I'm a novice. I just took up trail running a year ago. And
Uh-huh.
what I've found is a lot of truth is found out there, right? Like,
Yeah, for sure. Like it's like you can't hide behind who you want to be, you know?
yeah.
Like you can dress the part. I like to use the correlation of skiing, right? You can have a really top-notch, very high-end ski equipment,
Yeah.
ski gear and all that stuff. And on your first turn, I'm gonna know whether or not you can ski.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But but in trail running, it doesn't matter if you just go out there with your like street shorts on and a pair of shoes, man. Um, you're gonna find out who you really are every hour you go, every mile you go, every 1,000 feet you climb, and you know, you're, there's going to be an opportunity to quit at every turn. At every turn, there is a constant excuse to quit.
Mhm.
Like yeah, out my back door here, I can go to 13,500 feet, and there's numerous times where I'll go up to run through the pass and I'll be saying to myself, well, today I don't have to go over the pass. I don't have to.
Yeah.
But I say to myself, or if I don't go over the pass today, what is my rationale for that? And how am I going to feel the rest of the day? Right.
Really. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, screw it. I'm just going to the top of the pass. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be late for my meeting, whatever. I got to get there, you
Yeah.
know? And, I don't know. I think that's the thing. Um, we were talking about it in the prelude here today. It's like you find out who you really are deep into a ultra run.
And for our community members that aren't into running, I would just say anything that challenges you or forces you to answer those questions is worth doing, right? We spend so much of our
Yeah,
time avoiding difficult conversations with ourselves, failing to push our bodies. And we have an easy world, right? Like life is easier now than it's ever been in the history of mankind.
for sure.
So we have to be intentional on finding those things that get us to that place where we answer truths about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done a lot of research on this as to why it helps and why it helps veterans so much and anybody dealing with stress or PTSD or whatever it may be, whatever challenges they have in life. And the one thing I keep coming back to is a term called optic flow. And this thing about optic flow is really interesting to me. And without knowing it, I learned about it early in my life. My mom used to get stressed out and go for a drive.
Mm,
She'd leave us and just go for a drive. And she'd come back from that hour-long drive, right? Like everything was good. And so we get this when we drive down the road. Have you ever driven down the road and just like blew past your exit you were planning to get off of because
right.
your mind was like somewhere else? And then you wonder, like, geez, what happened in those last 12 miles? I hope I didn't run somebody off the road or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But optic flow is when you're moving. And for me, I find it most present when you're walking, running, cycling, or something like that. And that's where you see everything in front of you, but your brain is seeing all the things going by, that spatial
Hmm.
relationship of those things going by, but it's not focused on them. It doesn't focus on that tree you just ran past. It's aware of it. You don't even think about it or process it, but your frontal cortex is. It's processing it to keep you from hitting it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that optic flow quiets that part of your brain, which is also the part of the brain where all the stress and I mean, a neuroscientist would go into the specific part of the brain, but for me, I just know it quiets my brain and it allows me to then do work that I can't otherwise do,
Mm.
mental work.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so to me, that's the science behind it. I don't think about the science when I'm doing it. I just get out there and feel great, man. And then, the dopamine injection and all the other things. And sometimes you get in that runner's high. Yesterday, I ran down to the gym, and the first mile and a half, I hammered running down the downhill here, and with a 20-pound pack on. And I was like, man, I felt good.
Yeah.
Felt good, right? I mean, I didn't break any land speed records, but it felt good, you know?
Yeah. Chris, I wanted to go all the way back to the born to run topic real quick. And
Yeah,
this was my takeaway from that book is military service, then law enforcement. I was a mixed martial arts fighter. There was the thing there was always community and people that would sacrifice for each other. Because to get ready for a fight night, it's one-on-one. You're by yourself. But up until that night, you need all your teammates to come to practice. You need all your
yeah,
coaches to show up. You need to hit the weights. You need to go on the runs. You need to train all the disciplines. And that's what I got from that book, Born to Run, was like trail running is actually a community just like this. Like they show up for each other and they cheer each other
yeah,
on. And am I right in that assumption? Because I haven't ran any races on my own yet.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, the trail running community is the best community I've ever found in my whole life, next to the military.
Right.
And I would say it's a direct correlation from the military. In the military, I'm not saying every person's experience in the military was like this, but I actually think it's probably more prevalent in the National Guard and Reserves than it is in the active force. In the active force, you all get jammed into a unit together, mostly against your will.
Mm.
In the National Guard, you generally join a unit in your local community with all your peers from your local community,
Yep.
right? And oh, by the way, that additional mission of taking care of your neighbors during, um, you know, natural disasters and emergencies and things like that is really reinforcing of that feeling. So you get that sensation and feeling in the National Guard as well. It's truly the citizen soldier concept,
Yep.
right? Trail running community is the citizen soldier concept too, because we're all doing battle against one opponent, the trail.
Ooh.
And we don't, it's like I have literally seen leaders, in races, in 200-mile, 100-mile races, come up next to somebody else and say, "Hey, man, how you doing? Anything I can do to help?" Yeah, I'm trying to beat you, but is there anything I can do right now to try to help? Because what I love in the trail running community is they call it an assist, right? The only way that somebody breaks a course record is because somebody else pushed them to do it.
Mm.
No course records are getting broke by a guy going out there running it solo or woman.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, women are shattering course records. I think it's beautiful. And I actually think that in the near future, we're going to regularly see women beating men on these trail races outright. It's
Really?
already happened
Yep.
with some elites like Courtney DeWater and others, but I think you're going to see it more and more and more as women realize that they have everything on us, man,
Right.
and they have the power within them to really dominate this sport. But it's just like an amazing thing. Like they call it an assist. I I win the race because you pushed me, or in my case, I finish a race because the guy at the back of the guy, or the other woman at the back of the pack is pushing me to finish the race too. At the back of the pack, the story's really intense, man. I mean, we're not trying to win this thing. We're just trying to get done in the hours allotted.
Yeah.
If you watch my video of
Yep.
going around Moab, I'm just trying to make that cutoff. And I made it by 90 minutes, and I can tell you on the last 40 miles, there were numerous times where I said to myself, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Numerous times. And um and for every time that I said that, I had to find the intestinal fortitude to just like pull it out and figure out how to get it done. And even with like 5 miles to go and 2 hours to get it done in, or 2.5 hours to get it done in, I was debating whether or not I could keep stepping on my feet because they hurt so bad.
Right.
You know, I was like, I don't know. I could just lay down here and fall asleep and not make this, you know?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I think that's the thing about trail running that's so beautiful. And man, we got to get you out there. Got to
Uh,
get you into some of these races. You got to come out and help me on some of my races and experience it, man.
I'm
What a
down.
blast.
I'm down. I already told my wife that so we're spending next winter out on the West Coast, which it looks like a lot of the races are out
Yeah.
west. And I'm already, she's already looking at me because she knows, like, I get an idea. Next thing I know, I'm in a cage fighting, and she's like, "Why are we doing this?" um,
Exactly. My
no,
wife was the same way, and now she like goes to races and helps crew for me. And even 2 years ago, she jumped in and paced a segment at Cocodona 250 with me, and it was really awesome. You
ah,
know, I like so fun.
yeah, such great memories. And I'm 100% on board. But before I let you go, like, one of the things I really want to make sure we talk about, and that I'm purposeful in looking at how I can help with this, is the Warrior Trail Foundation, what it means to people, what the intention behind it is, and how do we support it.
Wow. So I think I told you in my write-up, I ran another foundation for 10 years. It was called the Wounded Warrior Patrol back in Pennsylvania. Over those 10 years, we worked with over 400 wounded warriors and family members to teach them how to ski and introduce them to the beauty of and the power of recreational therapy. That's where I first learned about all of this. And I was on the National Ski Patrol and professional ski instructor at the time, and it just seemed like a natural lead in. And a bunch of my patrollers were veterans, fellow patrollers were veterans, and we rallied together and put on this amazing event for 10 years. And then we ultimately decided that it was getting more and more challenging to fund it. And we wanted to go out on a high note. So we sort of had like our 10th year was sort of a grand finale. And I thought, well, that's probably it. And, now I can go on to focusing on my own stuff. And it wasn't more than 5 or 6 months. I couldn't handle not being focused on helping others. And it just suddenly hit me. I was like, my passion is trail running, and I know what it's done for me. I actually give trail running, um, like my experience in trail running, I believe is a big part of why I'm still here on this planet, is
Yeah.
because it gives me purpose. I'm an amateur trail runner, back of the packer. Yes, I'm on some teams because some companies have been willing to sponsor, and help out. But really, I'm a back of the packer, hoping to someday be a mid of the pack runner. And but I got to tell you, man, I train every day like an elite athlete.
Love it.
I train 20 to 25 hours a week. Um, I train like an elite. I train like a professional. I don't think that just because you're slow or old or gimped up or whatever is an excuse to not apply everything that you have
Mm,
to get better. And what I've learned in that process is, my coach is Jeff Browning, one of the greatest trail runners of all time. And Jeff, he basically called me out last year. He's like, Chris, he's like, you got to decide whether or not you're going to train and get into and really love training, or whether or not you're going to see training as a hurdle. And from that conversation, I completely flipped that mindset and said, I'm going to train like an elite,
yeah.
and I can only get better or stronger. I might not get faster, but, I can only get better and stronger and maybe finish these races in a better physical condition rather than a complete breakdown.
Yeah.
Right. So, um, it's like the Daytona 500. I might not win, but I just want to finish the damn thing
Yeah.
rather than be in a pile of metal against the wall. Right. So, and I think looking at this is, so anyway, that was the lead in into trail running, and I formed the Warrior Trail Foundation, put it together, and last year was our first fully operational year. We have 15 athletes currently in coaching, and what we do is we provide coaching scholarships to veterans and Gold Star family members, and if a veteran family member applied, we would consider them as well. But we provide a coaching scholarship for them, and then we line them up with a professional coach. Part of the backstory to that is I think coaching doesn't get enough credibility. I think there's a lot of people that think, well, I can just, download a plan and do the plan and all these things. Yeah, the plan is not what you're paying for in a coach. You're paying for that person who's in your corner,
Hmm.
who's going to challenge you to rise up to challenges that you wouldn't otherwise take on yourself. And, as a mindset performance coach, I do that every day with the people I talk to. Even with my clients as a wealth advisor, I'm challenging them to rise up to the next level. And that's what you get in a professional coach. And I think it's a really beautiful and symbiotic relationship. And what we're seeing with our veteran athletes is it's given them purpose that they didn't have after leaving service,
Yeah.
you know? And what we're really focused on is building this community. So you know, we're taking that foundation. Last year, we did some really cool things. This year, we're doing a couple camps where we're taking veteran athletes out. We're going to do that 100-mile circumnavigation of the Hard Rock 100 course in July. And I got to tell you, that's 60,000 vertical feet of climbing in 100 miles. We're going to do it over 4 days. And I don't care if the race is normally 48 and we're taking twice as long to do it. I promise you, it's a ball buster.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, just walking up this stuff is hard. And it's going to be a really challenging and amazing event. We've got a videographer that's coming to document the whole thing. I'm personally am doing what I'm calling the Resilience Project for the foundation, and that is I'm running 6 200+ mile races this year. My first one's in just a little over 3 weeks. The first 300-mile trail race in the country, the Monster 300, down in southern Arizona. And then I've got a month of recovery before Cocodona 250, which I'm running on a charity bib for the foundation. And there we're going to have a videographer who's putting together a film on that one, which is more focused on the commitment that the crew makes to support their runner.
Oh, amazing.
And with a backdrop of this amazing race. And I'm actually jokingly calling that the other story because this year's Cocodona 250 has the biggest field of elite athletes competing head to head for the run, and all the focus is going to be up there. We're the other story in the back.
Love it.
And arguably, I would say our story is a better story, but we'll see.
Chris, man, I'm so proud of you and thankful for you. And I got to tell you, your energy, your heart precedes you. Like getting to even get to have this conversation. Everybody I talk to about it, should I bring Chris on the show, had nothing but great things to say about you as a person, about your giving. And I want to just thank you for living a life that's making other people's lives better, maybe giving them another reason to stay here for another day and just give it a shot. Let's get through this day and let you know that people are
But
recognizing, my friend, and it means a lot.
I, I, I gotta say, I mean, my grandfather was a Lutheran minister, and I watched him throughout my formative years, um, never take any more than he needed from the church. And but it was less about religion and much more about in his life, it was much more about just sharing his gift with the world, you
Yeah.
know? And I think that was my grandfather, My father introduced me to that and certainly was very giving himself and always doing everything he could to help out. It's so funny at my dad's funeral, there were all these people that showed up that I didn't even know, okay, who were like, hey, your dad would just stop in at the shop and shoot the shit with me for a couple hours. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if that was just because he didn't want to go home, you know what I mean? Or whatever else. But yeah, it was really amazing to see how many lives he had impacted that we never knew about.
Yeah.
And man, that's my dream. That's what I hope my legacy is. I don't think you can focus every day on building a legacy. I think it's just gotta manifest itself. But I'm conscious and aware of that, and just feel blessed to have the opportunity to do what I do. And I couldn't do it without the people around me, my wife, my family, my friends. I am so blessed and grateful for every opportunity I have to share.
Chris, where can our community follow along with you? Where can they support the Warrior Trail Foundation and its mission?
Yeah, so I mean, I would be remiss without saying we need funds.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I won't beat around the bush. Sponsoring an athlete costs us about $4,000 a year. So that gives you an idea of what, and I have 30 athletes in the waiting that I'd like to get into coaching.
Wow.
So funding is important for us, and we really need the donations. They can do so at www.warriortrail.org, and certainly find us under Warrior Trail Foundation on Instagram, Facebook group, and they can find me on Instagram as warrior.runner6, and that's where I'm at on Instagram. Reach out, and also if you can't make a donation but you'd like to get involved, we certainly have volunteer roles and things like that. I will say our big fundraiser hope for the year, other than supporting my resilience project this summer, is on Veterans Day. We're planning on we experimented with this last year. It was a lot of fun. It's called 11 on 11/11. So we would like people to go out to Ultra sign up and sign up for our Warrior Trail Foundation 11 on 11/11, where they can do 11 miles, 11 kilometers, or 1.1 miles,
Yeah.
and make an $11 donation. And we're hoping to get 50 run clubs in 50 states to jump on with this, and ideally raise 50,000 plus out of this for Veterans Day. And you can walk it, you can cycle it, you can. I don't even care if you drive it. Just make the donation. but
Uh,
but I mean, that's our big focus for Veterans Day this year. And it's a often quoted statistic, but I think it's important to close with this. Every day, 22 veterans take their lives.
right.
But the statistic nobody talks about, and this is straight from the VA's study on veteran suicide, is another 20 to 30 veterans a day lose their lives to self-harm. And that's overdose, reckless behavior, whatever it may be. And, they may not have started out that day with the intent of losing their life, but it happens.
Yeah.
And our goal every day is N+1. Try to impact one of those lives and save one every day.
Love it.
Simple.
Chris, thank you
And
so much.
I thank you.
Sorry, my friend.
No, I thank you for this opportunity to highlight what we're doing with this amazing foundation and the team that we have put together, and people like you who dare to bring on a guy like me that help us spread that message. So that was a brave moment for you, by the way. I think I only dropped one F-bomb the whole meeting.
Sentence enhancers, my friend. They just enhance the story. Chris, I appreciate you so much. I look forward to being on a trail with you sometime, hopefully in the near future, and can't wait to support your work.
Thank you so much.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.